Can 80 years of amplifier heritage hold its own against streaming native brands that built this category? That's the question Onkyo is asking with the new Muse Y-50. And by the end of this video, we'll give you our answer. Now, it's fascinating to see how much the streaming amplifier category has evolved. Only 10 years ago, most streaming amplifiers came with questionable DACs and offered little more than Bluetooth for wireless playback. Today, brands like Eversolo and Wim are driving real innovation, but few have successfully combined serious amplification, streaming capabilities, and vintage-inspired design. Which is exactly the gap that Onkyo is stepping into with the new Muse range. Two integrated amplifiers, the Y-40 and the Y-50, sharing much of the same architecture, with the Y-50 offering a little more power and a few additional refinements. Since it's the flagship of the range, that's the one we're looking at today, so let's get into what it can actually do. First things first, let's talk about the design. You don't often see an amplifier with VU meters at this price point, and Onkyo has done a great job with them. There's a 5.46-inch color screen display with analog style VU meters that are elegant rather than flashy, giving the amp a more refined look that you could say reflects Japanese design sensibilities. It's a really nice touch, to be honest. It gives the Y-50 a bit of personality on your shelf rather than just being another black box with a volume knob. The unit itself feels like a solid build, and one of its biggest selling points is its compact size. Unlike a traditional full-width amplifier, this one is much easier to fit into smaller spaces, making it a neat and practical addition for a desk, shelf, or media cabinet. Another nice touch is the top part of the Y-50 above the aluminium front panel. It's ventilated for cooling, but instead of using a plain grille, Onkyo has incorporated the traditional sankuzushi pattern into the design. If you're not familiar, it's a traditional Japanese pattern, and it's a fitting one because Onkyo has been in the audio business since 1946. That's 80 years of building audio equipment, and while many people still associate the brand with AV receivers, the products of the past 2 years make it clear Onkyo is putting a much stronger emphasis on dedicated stereo hi-fi. And the Muse range is the clearest statement of that yet. But then again, it's not just for looks either. The aluminium front panel adds real rigidity to the chassis, which helps cut down on vibration from the speakers feeding back into the amp and affecting the sound. And to top it off, the whole thing's fanless too, which sounds like a small thing, but it really isn't. You get no fan noise humming away in the background, which matters a lot more than people expect once you're actually sat there listening to something quiet. Next, let's have a look at what this thing actually is. At its core, the Y-50 is an all-in-one. Amplifier, DAC, network streamer, all in one box. So the idea here is simple. All you have to do is add speakers, and that's basically it. No separates, no rack, no tangle of boxes behind the TV unit. On the streaming side, it's properly stocked with Spotify Connect, Tidal Connect, Qobuz Connect, AirPlay 2, and Google Cast, all of which you're able to connect to over Ethernet or Wi-Fi. You also have the ability to play media right off a USB stick using the dedicated USB-A port on the front panel of the Muse Y-50. So really, wherever your music lives, the thing can pull it in directly, no phone required if you don't fancy it. With that said, all of these options can be controlled through Onkyo's own controller app. So you can browse your music, switch inputs, and adjust settings all from your phone rather than getting up to use the front panel every time. Looking at the back of the Y-50, you have several options when it comes to connectivity. In the audio in section, you get a phono input supporting both moving magnet cartridges for entry to mid-level setups and moving coil cartridges if you're running a more expensive cartridge on your turntable. And along that, you have the ability to connect up to 3 additional devices using analog RCA inputs. You also get 2 options for digital inputs, one optical input known as Toslink and one coaxial input usually referred to as SPDIF. On the audio outside, if space allows for one, you can also connect the Y-50 up to a subwoofer using the subwoofer pre-out. The Muse Y-50, however, is not just a music box. There's HDMI ARC, so it doubles as your TV's sound system, plus a separate HDMI input for consoles. So this can genuinely sit in the center of your living room, not just your record collection. There's a couple of other things worth mentioning too while we're on the subject of connections. There's a 6.3mm headphone jack if you want to listen privately, and proper bass and treble tone controls if you want to shape the sound to your room or taste rather than being stuck with whatever the amp gives you. Now that covers what it can do and how it connects. Now let's get into what's actually driving all of this, as the engineering behind the Y-50 is where Onkyo's amplifier pedigree actually gets to show off a bit. So the Y-50 runs on an Axine Class D amplifier with a MOSFET output stage rated at 125 watts per channel into 8 ohms. Well, that sounds great, but what does that actually mean for you? Well, it means that this isn't just enough power for a pair of small bookshelf speakers. It's enough to properly drive demanding hard-to-power speakers too. And it's important to point this out because a lot of streaming amps in this category start to struggle the moment you move beyond compact stand mounts. Now I know what some of you might be thinking, Class D amplifiers have had a bit of a reputation over the past years for sounding a bit sterile and harsh on the top end. The tech has advanced a lot, and the Axine design in this amp is a good example of that. In most controlled listening tests, Class D amplifiers perform just as well as traditional Class A and B designs, so you can expect excellent sound quality at this price. In terms of sound, think of Onkyo Muse as musical rather than clinical. It doesn't exaggerate detail or bass. Instead, it presents music with excellent balance and natural tonality. Instruments have a realistic body, vocals sit beautifully in the mix, and there's enough clarity and separation to reveal subtle details without ever sounding harsh. In the UK, the Y-40 is priced at £849, while the Y-50 comes in at £1,399. And remember that 80 years of history you mentioned earlier? Onkyo is marking the milestone with a special 80th anniversary edition of the Y-50 due later this year. A slightly different appearance from the standard model, retailing at £1,599 here in the UK. Fittingly, Klipsch, a company that Onkyo has been part of since 2021, is celebrating its own 80th anniversary this year too. And honestly, having a stereo specialist like them in the family is a big part of what's steering Onkyo back toward 2-channel hi-fi. It's probably not the cheapest option in this category. Wim's Amp Ultra and the Marat's M1 both sit close to the space, and both have picked up some serious praise for what they offer. But the Y-50 isn't really trying to win this by being the budget choice. What it's arguing instead is this: the built-in moving magnet and moving coil phono stage, HDMI ARC and HDMI input for proper TV and console setup, and 80 years of amplifier building experience behind the circuit design. So if you want your streaming amp to also be your vinyl setup and TV sound system without adding another box, that's where the Y-50 makes its case. If you're still shopping around in this category, keep an eye out at the end of the video. We've got a whole playlist of amplifier overviews coming up on screen. So, can 80 years of amplifier heritage hold its own against the streaming native brands that built this category? Having spent some time with the Y-50, we think the answer is yes. Not because it's doing anything wildly different, but because it does the fundamentals, power, build, connectivity, with a level of confidence that comes from actually knowing how to build an amplifier for decades. And honestly, this is one that you'll want to hear for yourself. So if you're London-based, pop into our store and try it out in our dedicated listening room. And if after that you've got more questions about it, our knowledgeable team will be more than happy to go through the details and help you make the right choice for your setup and space. You can find the Y-50 in black and silver at premiumsound.co.uk. Everything that we've talked about will be linked in the description down below. If this was useful, give it a like and make sure you subscribe and hit that bell for new hi-fi videos every week. So, do you reckon Onkyo's earned its place in this category? Let us know in the comments. We really enjoy reading your thoughts on all the gear we cover. And if you're still on the lookout for the right amplifier for your setup, we have a whole playlist of reviews that you can check out right here. Until next time, happy listening.